Hello. The objects I'll be talking about for the next 5 minutes or so are the Handaxes, to be found humbly displayed in cases to either side of the door in the last room of the Exeter timeline. I'm going to try to address just a few broad questions about them in the hope of showing you my reasons for thinking they're the most interesting objects in this museum. To start with, I'll talk about how they came to be here, and by doing so discuss them as objects as part of a larger collection. They are actually only a small part of a very large collection. There are thousands from one site near Broom, of which there are around 500 in Exeter and 800 in Doncaster. It's very unusual to find so many in one place. In fact, there are only a handful of sites in the UK like this, so it's a real resource for archaeologists. Like so often for remains representative of the Stone Age or Paleolithic, there are only these and a few sites where the bones of the people who made them and the animals they hunted are found, but in this site there are only the stone tools, and usually that's the case. And unlike those remains of the animals they hunted and the people themselves, these are the only things they made. These are their only material culture. So the first point I'd like to make is how lucky we are to have them, to have a thing that they made that lasted so long, made of something so resilient, and also how lucky we are to have anything to represent them, because unlike most of the other periods in this museum, there are no other archaeological remains. There's no pottery or coins, and there's certainly no writing. So the only thing we have to understand the peoples themselves is these tools. It seems like then a natural progression to talk about the people themselves, who made them. The sediments they're found in date these to around 300 to 250,000 years ago. And this date means they were probably made by Homo heidelbergensis or Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals. These are related to, but are not modern humans. So though they lived in England, they are not the ancestors of anyone alive today. The earliest of these kinds of tools, basically exactly the same. You wouldn't be able to tell the two apart if you held them next to each other, are around 1 million years old in Europe and 1.6 million years ago in Africa. And this represents a remarkable consistency, in terms of the time period that they remain unchanged, and there's also a geographical consistency across Africa, Europe, and North and East Asia. So the second point I'd like to make is, as part of the outcome of the way that museums tend to condense history and have most items representative of the most recent periods of history, this archway represents around 1.2 million years in human history. The rest of the museum around 10,000, and most of it only sort of the last 2,000 years. And similarly, while the other galleries in this museum, when you're in them, you're seeing things which are representative of quite a bounded geographical region. These are representative of human history everywhere that humans lived at the time, essentially. So I think, yes, the second point I'd like to make is that these are part of all of our heritage, a whole human heritage, not just one group of us. And finally, I'd like to talk about the axes themselves. They are all made of flint, and each one is chipped from a larger stone, and then extensively worked. They seem to have been quite successfully used for hunting, for butchering, for digging, scraping, breaking bones, and scooping out marrow. They are the Swiss Army knife of the Paleolithic. And this has actually been demonstrated by some quite insightful work of people called experimental archaeologists who actually make these tools and use them. Exeter University is indeed a world leader in this. And such experimental archaeologists have actually been able to butcher an entire elephant with skin an inch thick with a stone tool like that. From these experiments, we know that they take around 30 minutes to make, but some have taken much longer, and they have to be made from a much larger piece of rock. So they represent a mind which can plan and prepare and produce a very consistent product for quite abstractly in three-dimensional space with remarkable accuracy. And by the way that they are found in sizes that are either too big or too small to have ever been used, and the consistency and the aestheticism of their shape, they suggest something symbolic as well, but the symbolic meanings can only be guessed at. As such, they're an insight into a very ancient mind, and that's the third point I'd really like to make. These provide a way of understanding, a way of seeing into a mind unlike anything modern, not entirely alien, but not like our own. These are representative of quite a different mind. So, to summarise, I think I'd just like to say how, perhaps because these generally fall into the realm of science as opposed to the humanities, like most of the other things in the museum, they're often considered quite boring and functional. But actually they represent something really awesome about human history and about human culture as well. So maybe next time you walk past them, you'll spend a little more time looking at them. Thank you.